who helped me and who we worked together with the support from other international organizations, the Sinovate Center, the ACT, which is the African Center for Technology Studies, and also the Science Granting Council Initiative of, it's an international NGO, for giving us the opportunity to look at this matter. Now, let me go straight into what were the study objectives that we are looking at. One was to determine the level of production and competence of local industry in the manufacture of essential medicines. Two, it was to identify policies and regulations that impact on innovation and development of new products. And three, to establish a mitigation strategy to reduce the product gap between the essential medicine list and what was being produced. And lastly, to explore how collaborations, financing, research links, and technology transfer can be harnessed to boost and improve on the local industry. Now, the normal protocols of research, literature research, questionnaires, we developed them. We carried out interviews among a number of stakeholders within the Eastern Africa, because Ethiopia is included in this study. I will not go into the details of many things, but summarize very quickly the findings that we got. The level of production of competence in manufacture of essential medicines, one of the things is that 28% of the listed essential medicines list are produced locally. So if we are talking of the essential medicine list, we are only saying that our local industry can only do less than 30%. Now, about 3 manufacturers at the time were producing sterile products. Unfortunately, we now have only one manufacturer, 1 or 2 manufacturers for sterile products. One is a small volume, which is just starting this year, and another one is in the EPZ. So technically speaking, we have a big problem in the sterile products production. Then we also saw that there was underutilization of the capacity that has been installed in our facilities. 43% utilization for tablets, 48% for capsules, 28%, I think 28% capsules, and liquids is 52%. One good thing is that there is ongoing upgrading of the facilities to comply with the WHO standards. I may point out here that we have one local industry that is pre-qualified by WHO, pre-qualified. But when you are talking about the GMP standards, we are talking close to between 8 and 10 companies which are in that capacity, and I'll come back to that later. We're looking at the policies. There is a clear lack of clear, pragmatic government policy to support local industry. Sometimes things are working well, a good pronunciation from Minister of Health, Minister of Industrialization, but when Treasury steps in, it sometimes negates what has been pronounced on the other side. So incoherence in policy, pronunciations, and development. Inadequate incentives on pharmaceutical inputs is one thing today, another thing there, but they are inadequate, and I'll come back to that when I'm making the propositions. And lack of strategies for product development. I think that the local industry will need to partner and step up the so that we can be able to make more medicines above the 28% of the essential medicines list. When it comes to collaborations and partnerships, uncommon, yet this is very uncommon, yet it's a means of enhancing GMP compliance, market penetration, and improvement of product portfolio. The partnerships involve, of course, technical transfer, and these are some of the areas that we need to see when we are considering new product lines and utilize research findings. And we have what we can call the silo mentality, where the research institutions, the universities, when they see a product with a potential, it's not shared with the industry immediately. And then there is a delay, and then the IP issues and all those things step in because of that lack of pragmatic approach. Lack of clear guidelines and awareness of technology transfer, I think we just bump into one, and then this is the way to go. And yet we know that collaborations and research is a sharing of risks. Now, one thing that we may be able to say, of course, is it doesn't excite the local industry to enter into partnerships. There is in this country what we call public-private partnerships. Now, the public sector seems not to be very active. Between private to private, that one is a little more logical because it's contractual, but guarantees that you will require from the public sector is lacking. Now, there is no alignment, none of alignment of curricula and research priorities by local universities and research institutions to local productions. A lot of work is being done to improve the local manufacturing. But if you go to the universities and you want to listen to see what curriculum they have, you still find that industry is very not as emphasized as in practice. You still find new technologies and so forth. They do not have what you know modern production rooms with equipment that would make the students more aligned to production. We still have a very big gap in connecting the manufacturing and the teaching and research institutions. So you have institutions of research, and you find that for all these years that you have been researching, haven't you gotten something that you can share with the local industry or anybody else? And you find that again, that most of the findings is for publications and not much to do with the production side. Now, the other thing was how do you sustain and mitigate these strategies? So I'm going to propose a stimulus for local production so that is sustainable and it can be supported in the next slides. But one thing that we may have to look at is collaboration and partnership is for continuous pharmaceutical growth. It's not a one-off issue. Targeted incentives to improve the infrastructure and quality management is required. And targeted means that you reward performers so that it's not free for all, but reward performers like we have seen recently in preferential procurement. The other thing is the regulatory drive appetite and enforcement. And the word appetite means is just that you work out of the norm. You go out of the box. You throw away that box and say that, yes, I'm a regulator, but we must see this progress taking place in the local industry. And of course, access to affordable finances is an issue, and government should drive research agenda because we have what we say the burden of diseases which are announced every year. But the gap here is that the local industry is not invited to say, can you focus in these areas? So that you find that the key diseases that are afflicting us, we still have to import the medications. Let me briefly see where we can be able to stimulate, because this is really now the stimulus. And the stimulus is based on the concept of categorization of industry into what is scientifically called low risk, medium, and high risk performers. And the high risk performers are the companies which are at the lower bottom, and unfortunately they're the majority. And then we have the medium, those ones who are trying to move up, and A is a fully compliant. Now, if you're looking at targeted incentives, you're actually looking at A and B. And then C would have certain provisions, maybe for technology transfer, finance, and all those things. But when it comes now to the benefits for moving up, what you would expect that the upper companies, the ones that are performing well, are doing new formulations, they are doing new products, they're introducing new technologies, they are adapting clinical research findings, they are entering into partnerships, there is preferred, the preferred companies for government procurement or public procurement and so forth. So there is an incentive, a self-sustaining incentive to make sure the companies move to full compliant. But if you give everybody everything at the same time, then you would not be able to achieve that. Now, in order to do the new products and so forth, you need the research to come in. And doing the research, you need the government to share the health priority needs with the industry and the other health partners, so that we can be able now to say, this is what the government wants. And the government will also channel some research support to work and help the partner with the national research institutes and so forth to fund research in this area. In the pharma area, you would be looking at responding to government needs and also engaging universities for product development. We remove that silo mentality where the research is going on, but nobody knows when it comes, it hits the daylight. Then the research institutions must perform research related to the pharma industry and collaborate with the industry to develop products, because we know that research institutions and the universities may not have the necessary requisite equipment that is available in the industry, and that kind of collaboration will help develop also the pipeline products and get out the experts from those institutions working out with the industry. And then initiate the procurement, procurement system to buy what is local, to buy what is coming from the initiative. This guarantees, when we are talking about public-private partnerships, that there is a level of guarantee that if I bring this product, it has gone through all the necessary quality steps, then we are obliged to make it available to the public, and that's where the government comes in. And also lobby that the market is increased to to cover, is large enough to cover the neighboring countries and the regional communities. Now, having looked at that, you combine now the stimulus, what you want to achieve in the industry is growth, and what you want in the research partnership institution is products, new products. And therefore, you need some model that brings these two together. And the model that brings these two together is you must infiltrate it with the targeted incentives and affordable finances, because that plays on both sides. And as the industry is making many these medicines, they are collaborating with the research institutions, and the research institutions with the industry, and there is growth. There is also another thing that must be mentioned at this stage, that the regulatory environment must be vibrant, must be so vibrant and so responsive to make sure that the companies are moving from C, B to A. Now, in doing so, doesn't mean that you are going to close the industry, because that is the biggest fear the industry has. It just means rationalizing, licensing and rationalizing what they can be able to produce within the technology and the facilities they have, so that the facility does not, you don't suffocate the facility by producing too many products in non-compliant situation, which in effect doesn't make the industry grow. So, my dear pharmacists and all participants, now when you look at this model, it is me moving also from Me Too products. It's moving away from everybody's producing the same cotrimoxazole, paracetamol, what and so forth. We actually, this model assumes that the companies that have achieved high GMP compliant are going to say, wait a minute, I don't have to produce this one. I can partner with another company, help it to grow so that they can produce for me at the quality that I require, and then help them also to move up. And it is something that we need to look at, especially at this time. We have learned from the COVID pandemic that there is geographical limitation for movement of medicine. So we just have to put our house in order and do all these things. So in conclusion, you are looking for symbiotic partnership in one manner that ensures full benefit of stakeholders. Win-win situation. The government must commit on procurement, regulate, and control. The industry must invest in infrastructure, product development, and manufacturing, and then lead to product optimization, new formulations, and go make sure that there are good policies and procurement of quality products. Research institutions and academic institutions must link to industry and for optimized production and scale up, train industry and research oriented pharmaceutical scientists, so that the products of the institutions are relevant again, whether they are students or new products, they are relevant for a local situation and local production. And then lastly, that people should be appreciate the results of local production and use local production through, of course, access to quality essential medicines, and of course, the rational use of these medicines. So my colleagues, pharmacists, this is all I have got to say this morning. I think that this report is already online, and you can be able to get the details of it. I'll give you the link maybe later on, but I'm happy that I was given this opportunity to talk what we are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wanyanga. He's the founder and CEO of PharmaQ. He's literally the grandfather of local pharmaceutical manufacturing. And we appreciate your great work in the research paper. We hope that the stakeholders have taken notice and we can start seeing some some sort of investments towards growing the local industry. So with that, we go to the next presentation by Dr. Suleiman Khanyare. Please introduce yourself and proceed with your presentation, Dr. Suleiman. Thank you.
Hello, sound test. Are you hearing me first?
Loud and clear, Doc.
Yes, I'm in a very remote area in Wajir. So my name is Suleiman Rashid Khanyare, pharmacist by profession, public health supply chain analyst working with InSupply Health Limited. So my topic today that I'm going to take you through is increasing access to commodities in nomadic communities using Cstock in Kenya. Please, next slide. It has been proven that the recruitment of community health volunteers to support the health programs can fully supplement service delivery, the formal systems, and has improved access to healthcare and health outcomes in underserved and in particular underserved areas, and in particular where there are health inequalities due to scarcity of trained personnel. Usually the CHVs are trained on some technical modules, but they face a number of problems or challenges in executing their mandate, especially in the management of health products, the essential health product that they handle. Please, next slide. Part of the challenges they face include low literacy level of the CHVs. Most of these CHVs are of different backgrounds. They have low literacy levels, so they don't have adequate reporting tools for the commodities. They have low capability or low capacity to complete reports. Already the normal health facilities are facing incompleteness of reports. So the CHVs have difficulty completing reports accordingly. In existence of avenues for submitting commodity reports, because there are no proper systems for community health volunteers to account for their commodities, and also inadequate access to health facilities, health services, especially in arid and semi-arid areas where it is more pronounced. Infrastructural and socio-cultural challenges, depending on the setup, is also an obstacle for them to execute their work. Next slide, please. So InSupply Health, with funding from Bill and Melinda Gates, is implementing the SCALE project. SCALE stands for Supply Chain Alternatives for the Last Mile Equity. SCALE, the project goal is to address inequity in access to health commodities through developing sustainable and scalable community-based distribution models that reached the last mile, that reach the underserved remote communities. The project is founded on partnership that works with the national and the county governments, at the same time with partners that are also on the ground that are supporting health projects. This is to foster cross-sector engagement and improve the performance of supply chain systems and address community-based distribution barriers that include community health commodities, such as availability of contraceptives and other basic products like ORS to the most underserved communities. For us to carry out this objective, we have deployed human-centered design approach to scale up the Cstock approach. Next slide, please. Cstock it supports demand-based procedures and connects with health workers, that is the community health workers or the community health volunteers, to their resupply facilities, and also the user-friendly dashboards for visibility, accountability, and transparency. And we also have impact teams that was alluded to by Laura yesterday. Impact teams, impact stands for information mobilized for performance analysis and continuous transformation. So the impact teams will be there to foster data use and make decisions depending on data that was gotten from the lowest level. How Cstock works is a community health volunteer reports data with a mobile application through using a mobile application. That is from the end, what they have, the end of month stocks and what they have consumed is what will be reported. That will be reflected and received by the CHA, who is going to analyze that data. The CHA will make a process of resupply, facilitating the resupply process for the CHV, depending on best supply chain practices. That is how it works. Usually the commodities are gotten from the public health facilities. So we have also impact teams that is the CHVs are going to meet with the CHA on a monthly basis to review the logistical data and take actions to address any supply chain challenges that they have been facing. We have a dashboard that is linked to the DHIS that can be used for purpose of tracking by the sub-county health management teams and the facility in charges for purpose of monitoring. Next slide, please. So we have deployed, as I've already alluded to, a human-centered design approach for us to do a research and get to the best model of the Cstock application. Human-centered design is a creative approach to problem solving. It is about building a deep empathy with the people you are designing for, generating ideas, building prototypes, and sharing what you have made with people you are designing for, and eventually coming with an innovative solution so that that can be implemented. So we made our intent around February 2019 on how we can better strengthen health supply chains to migratory hard-to-reach communities throughout the adoption of Cstock and community health model. That was in February last year. Then we went into the field to do an explorative research and observations of how community health workers work. We administered questionnaires to a wide range of people, including healthcare workers at the facility level, at the county level, at the sub-county level, and community health volunteers, and also members of the community, including women of reproductive age and all that. Then subsequently, we did an ideation so that we can create ideation process so that we can make sense out of what we have collected, the data that we have collected. That was transforming our research data into meaningful and actionable insights that became the foundation of our design. Then subsequently, we built prototypes from those ideas that were generated. Then we went into beta testing in the field to some of the areas that we have collected data from. Then we iterated again, and the process continued, refining data, going back, getting feedback, then we get back. Then we came up with a redesigned and tested tools. Next slide, please. So as I've alluded to earlier, we had one-on-one interviews from members of the sub-county health management team and county health management team, as well as members of the community from Samburu and Wajir when we are doing our explorative research, which was also, we also included usability testing of the application already we had for the CHVs. Then out of that, the insights that were generated, we developed 8 personas, including women, or 2 for women of reproductive age, community health volunteers, then leaders, husbands, CHVs, 3 of them, and nurses, 1. Then the insights that, as I've already said, that we generated was distilled through the ideation and prototyping process. Then subsequently, we iterated, iterated again, tested. We had to do that several times for us to come up with a proper design of the Cstock. 4 prototypes that we came up with. We are the redesigned manual tools, the normal inventory card. How can a CHV utilize that to report the normal inventory cards? A user-friendly application, mobile application, a chat portal, a portal for the community health assistants. And for the illiterate CHVs, we developed a USSD or an SMS hybrid reporting platform. Next slide, please. We also had to consider the supply chain plan that is in place so that we can have a design to take care of this process. So usually facilities are supplied from KEMSA. As per law now, we can only procure from KEMSA. So products flow from KEMSA to health facility. Then a CHA is going to facilitate the reordering process. Then the commodities go up to the CHV, and then they will serve the community. This is some contraceptives and ORS and other basic items like zinc ORS. Then there is the flow of information that a CHV is going to report using the Cstock app, and the CHA is going to validate this data, and the health facility in charge will have an opportunity to monitor this data through the dashboard. Equally, the sub-county and the county team or health programs for that case are able to review the data using the dashboards. And that is for somehow we had to consider a plan for, in case a CHV migrates to another area with this community, we had to make a way that CHV can be linked to another facility and a CHA that is going to, the app has that provision. Next slide, please. So for purpose of as we iterate and always incorporate any new developments into the application, developmental evaluation is what we usually use in our setup. Developmental evaluation is an approach that aims to iterate on implementation models in real time by fostering a deeper understanding of the vast amount of information that is emerging in due course. Unlike the classical monitoring and evaluation, we try to monitor real time and incorporate if there is any learning that we need to adapt to. So we already have done wave 1, and most of it has been incorporated. We have just finished wave 2, and in November we're going to do the wave 3 of the developmental evaluation. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, we're saying that mixed and collaborative approaches provide in-depth insights for design and implementation of customized health systems by ensuring inclusion of community voices in design and contribution to adoption to specific context and situations during implementation. Insights generated from presently the Cstock is used by over 3,000 CHVs in the 4 counties, that is Samburu, Wajir, Turkana, and Mandera. The Cstock is available on KHIS and is accessible from sub-county to national level. Cstock will contribute to electronic community health information system, national digitization strategy that is currently in course. Next slide. So far, we have done the HCD where we generated the insights, prototyping, and iteration. we have incorporated all the requirements, and we have developed the redesigned Cstock. We have rolled out the Cstock trainings to the CHVs and the sub-county and community health assistants in those counties. And currently, we the cascaded training is over, and we are monitoring the reports as they come in. And also, we are going to, as I've already alluded in the previous slide, going to do the developmental evaluation next phase to always learn and incorporate in case there are new things that are coming up. I thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Dr. Suleiman. Well done. You said you're in Garissa?
Wajir.
Wajir. Oh, there are some people who think Wajir is not in Kenya. You can see he's presenting and we can all hear. So well done. And I want to acknowledge that In Supply Health is one of our sponsors for this conference. We really appreciate your support and the work you are doing on the communities.
Welcome.
Thank you. So a reminder to the presenters, go to the Q&A tab. There are questions that are still not answered. Please make sure you engage with the people asking the questions. And then for the bell, Anis, I won't ring a bell, but I know this statement rings a bell in your mind. Then there's someone who really wants to chat with their classmates. Please, when you see a private chat, respond to that colleague of yours so that you can start engaging privately. So anyone who wants to chat with someone in this Zoom meeting, just go to Zoom group chat. You can see a private chat button. You just click it and you can easily chat with the person you want to bond with. Remember, socialization is part of the goals of this annual symposium. So I want to give it up to Bayer to do their presentation. I don't know who is present. Thelma, are you in this meeting?
Yes, I'm in the meeting.
Okay, please
I
take
hope
it
you can
over.
hear me loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Over to you, Velma. Thank you.
All right. Kindly allow me to be able to share the screen. Okay. So thank you very much to the whole PSK team for planning and executing this annual scientific event in a seemingly very seamless manner. Congratulations to you, and also for allowing us to partner with you during this event. And pulling together, I've seen current attendance list is at about 390 participants. So congratulations to you. And in line with this year's PSK conference theme, which is on planning, delivery, primary healthcare, responding to emerging healthcare dynamics. So I, on behalf of Bayer, will take you through just the role of the pharmacist in this whole anticoagulation process, because it's not just the doctor prescribing, but also how the patient is managed at the pharmacy level, you being the last healthcare professional in contact with the patients. So I will quickly take you through the indications where we have rivaroxaban registration. We have it in stroke prevention in the atrial fibrillation patients, DVT and PE treatment, DVT prophylaxis post-hip and post-knee replacement surgery. Then we have Xarelto 2.5 milligram, which is new in the market for the patients who have coronary artery disease and peripheral artery disease at high risk of ischemic events, and also for secondary prevention of acute coronary syndrome. So what is your role? Of course, is in understanding the basic components of rivaroxaban, where we say that the bioavailability of rivaroxaban is 80 to 100%, and it's an oral anticoagulant. And it is important for you as the pharmacist to always emphasize to these patients that those who are on the 15 and the 20 milligram tablets, they're supposed to take it with food, because at fasting states, the bioavailability is significantly reduced. And for the patients who are on the 2.5 milligram or the 10 milligram tablet, then they can take it with or without food. Half-life of rivaroxaban is 5 to 9 hours in young adults, and 11 to 13 hours in the elderly patients. And the peak time to peak plasma concentration is 2 to 4 hours. And renal exchange as an unchanged drug is 33%. Hence, one of the reasons why it is not recommended for patients with severe renal impairment. And so quickly, when it comes to the dosing for PE and DVT treatment, recommended dosing is 15 milligram as a BD dosing for the first 21 days of treatment. Then it switched to once daily of the 20 milligram from day 22 onwards. Then there are those patients who may require extended treatment because of the risk factors that they may be having. The patient can either be given 10 milligram, which is a reduced dose for those who have low risk factors, or they may be maintained on 20 milligram if their risk factors are still high. And of course, we know the duration of treatment is dependent on patient-to-patient basis and based on the doctor's discretion. And for the patients who have non-valvular atrial fibrillation, recommended dosing is very simple, once daily of the 20 milligram for the patients who have normal renal function. But for the patients who have moderate renal impairment, we recommend, actually for the patients with the creatinine clearance of between 49 to 15, we recommend 15 milligram as a once daily dosing. However, it's important to note that for the patients who have a creatinine clearance of between 15 and 29, these patients need to be monitored a bit more closely than any other category of patients. And of course, rivaroxaban is not recommended for patients who have a creatinine clearance of below 15 ml per minute. Then for the new indications, the patients with chronic coronary or symptomatic peripheral artery disease, the dosing is very simple. It's a BD dosing of the 2.5 milligram given together with aspirin. Here, the dose of aspirin that was used during this particular trial called the COMPASS trial was the 100 milligram of bare aspirin. So that is the recommended dosing. However, for the patients with impaired renal function of between 15 and 49 ml per minute as far as the creatinine clearance is concerned, still maintain the dose as for the patients with normal renal function. That is aspirin plus 2.5 milligram of Xarelto as a BD dosing. Then just as all dosings of Xarelto, we don't recommend for patients who have severe renal impairment. So when it comes to the practical management, what do we recommend? Number one, in terms of INR testing, you cannot do INR testing on rivaroxaban as a molecule because that one was specifically designed for monitoring the VKA effect in the body. So how do you monitor? Well, according to the scientific trials for all the NOACs, they say they have the predictable pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic properties. Hence, there's no need for monitoring as you would do with patients who are on warfarin. Now, for your patients who are on VKA and they may need to be transitioned into Xarelto therapy, recommendation is that, first of all, take the patient's INR. We all know that the VKAs have a very slow onset and a very slow offset of action. So first of all, check the INR, stop the Xarelto, the VKA, then check the INR. For a patient who's on PDVT, if the INR is at 2.5 and below, then start Xarelto. For a patient who is on, who has non-valvular atrial fibrillation, once the INR is at less than 3, then start the rivaroxaban, then give the dosing as recommended, as earlier highlighted. However, if there's a need to switch a patient from Xarelto for one reason or another, maybe they cannot tolerate the product, or maybe where they are, they cannot access it for one reason or another, then the recommendation is overlap the two anticoagulants. As I mentioned earlier on, VKA has a slow offset of action. So overlap the two anticoagulants, Then once the INR is at about 2 or between 2 and 3, then you can now continue with the VKA therapy as recommended. If a patient is admitted and they are on enoxaparin, for example, recommended dosing is you just stop the parenteral anticoagulant and start Xarelto treatment 0 to 2 hours before the time they were supposed to have gotten their next injection. So remember that if they are on the first phase of DVT treatment, give 15 milligram as a BD dosing with food. Then if it's past the 3 weeks of treatment, give 20 milligram once daily with food. And if you need to switch a patient, maybe they have been admitted and they need to be switched from Xarelto to the parenteral anticoagulant, just stop the Xarelto, then start the parenteral at the time when they were supposed to have taken the oral medication. So important highlight also, in the event of a missed dose, if the patient was on the 10, 15, or 20 milligram, they should take it immediately they remember. And they should not double up the dose for the time they said the duration they had forgotten. However, if the patient was on the first phase of DVT treatment where they were on the 15 milligram as a BD dosing, then they should take the 2 tablets at the same time. And this is because during the first 21 days of treatment, which is very crucial, the risk of recurrence is highest. So you want to minimize any chance of the patient getting a recurrent clot during the first phase of treatment. And if the patient is on the 2.5 milligram and they remember that they had missed their dose, let them continue the dosing as recommended. They should not double up the dose at any one point. In the event of an overdose, we don't have what is it called? An antidote for Xarelto, but there's one called andexanate alpha that has been produced by a company called Patola Laboratories. It's for all factor 10 inhibitors, not available in the country as far as I know. And in the few countries where it's available, it's quite costly. So one thing you need to realize is that if a patient has an overdose of Xarelto, then if it's within the first 2 hours of treatment, then activated charcoal will really help in reducing the absorption. Otherwise, this patient needs to be monitored very closely and referred to a healthcare provider to just monitor and see the effects. But beyond 50 milligram of ingestion, no more can be absorbed into the body. So as I near the conclusion, Xarelto is not recommended for patients who are below the age of 18. And those also have severe renal impairment. It's also not recommended for patients with prosthetic heart valves. And those who are also taking the strong CYP3A4 inducers, and also those who are taking the same category of drugs, the CYP3A4 inhibitors and the PGP inhibitors such as the azole antimycotics or HIV protease inhibitors. Again, when it comes to the contraindications, Xarelto is contraindicated in the patients who have hypersensitivity to the active ingredients. For the patients who have clinically significant bleeding, it's also not recommended if you're taking 2 anticoagulants at the same time, unless the time when you're overlapping between when you're switching from Xarelto to VKA. That's the only time we recommend you overlap 2 anticoagulants at the same time. And of course, it's contraindicated in the pregnant ladies and those who are breastfeeding. So for much more information, I'll highly recommend you to go to thrombosisadvisor.com. There's a lot of resources there for you as a pharmacist. There's a lot on the venous and arterial portion of it, and also in the new indication in the vascular protection. Always log in as a healthcare professional. And maybe just as a climax of our presentation, and also just in line with trying to improve access of Xarelto in the counties and in the whole country at large, starting the 1st of October, which was like 14 days ago, the price of Xarelto for all the strengths was reduced by 50%. to the new trade price of 139 shillings, then it still has a less 10% discount for the wholesalers. And it is also available in KEMSA and MEDS channels. And the main reason for the price reduction is because we want as many patients as possible to be able to afford treatment and maintain their treatment therapy, and also, and finally, to finish the recommended dosing, depending on whatever is being managed. So kindly take note of that. Please, once you get this reduced price benefit in your hospitals and in your retail chains, kindly pass it to the patient who needs to benefit much more as far as getting good quality medication is concerned. And so if you have any concerns about adverse events for any of the Bayer products, kindly get in touch with us through our pharmacovigilance department, through the email address pharmacovigilance.middleafrica@bayer.com. Or if you have any medical queries, or if you want any clinical trial, kindly get in touch with us through medical.middleafrica@bayer.com. So Dr. Jayesh, one of your very own is the one heading the pharmacovigilance department. So kindly reach out to him if you need any PV support from us. Thank you very much once again for the opportunity to partner with you in this event and for the presentation slot. Thanks.
Thank you, Velma, for the very good presentation, and we appreciate Bayer for your continued support to PSK and for making this conference a big success.
Thank you.
Okay, so again, thank you. Presenters, a reminder to check on the Q&A tab to answer the questions asked by the participants. Second thing, please, for all questions, use the Q&A tab. Whatever you put on the charts, we'll consider it as entertainment or information. So if it's not answered, you cannot blame PSK. So at this time, I want to welcome the upcoming panel. So we have a panel on creating a winning supply chain for primary health care. We have the moderator is Dr. Preston Ochieng. The panelists, Dr. Wilberforce Wanyanga, Dr. James Riungu, and Dr. Evelyne Kahare. The panel will run for the next 1 hour. So just a brief about Dr. Ochieng before I give it up to him. So Dr. Preston Ochieng is well known to many of us as a senior pharmacist. He's in charge in the Kitale County Hospital Comprehensive Care Center, a skilled pharmaceutical systems expert and a registered pharmacist. He has a wide range of experience in PV, QA, pharmacoeconomics, health system strengthening, policy analysis, and procurement supply chain. Over to you, Dr. Preston Ochieng. Take it away.
Thank you very much. I hope all of us can hear me clearly.
We can hear you, Preston, well and loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. So today we'll be having a panel discussion on creating a winning supply chain for primary healthcare systems. And I have a panel of 3 people who are going to discuss this. So I'd like that the slide on their biographies be displayed so that I can introduce all of them. Our first panelist would be Dr. Wilberforce Wanyanga, who is a consulting pharmacist, actually known to very many of us. Previously served in the UNIDO National Pharmaceutical Expert, currently a board member of the Federation of African Pharmaceutical Network. He has also been instrumental in and participated in many fora in the profession, including membership at various boards of management, the Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya, KEMSA, and he was also a past chairman in 1997 and 98, and a chair too of the Legal Ethics Committee. He has participated in the regional activities on regulatory harmonization, as he had presented earlier, intellectual property, and access to essential medicines. Currently, the Executive Director of PharmaQ, which to those who attended the previous discussion have seen, and is quite active in advancing ideals related to local pharmaceutical production and access to quality medicines. Next. Yes, Dr. James Riungu, also a very senior member of the profession, is now the Supply Chain Director at the USAID Global Health Supply Chain, Procurement and Supply Chain Management Project, currently working under the Afya Ugavi initiative. A healthcare supply chain specialist and registered pharmacist with over 20 years of experience in pharmaceutical supply chain. Riungu has a broad range of experiences in the health sector that includes supporting research in global health supply chain management. Next. And then we have Dr. Evelyne Kahare, a member of PSK, is a sub-county pharmacist and support officer at Njoro Level Hospital in Nakuru County, a passionate healthcare worker, trained and registered to save lives through medicines. Experience in the whole continuum of pharmaceutical healthcare, majoring in areas of governance, supply chain management, pharmaceutical program support, and public health interventions in healthcare. Yeah, so from here, we will have a brief intro into supply chain. We will not belabor that because I think the previous presentations have also been quite elaborate on the supply chain. Do we have the presentation on the introduction to supply chain? Or do I share it from my end?
Doc, we are giving you presentation rights. You can share the screen.
Okay. Is it visible from your end?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
It is, eh?
Yeah.
Now we are going to have a brief discussion, just a very brief one on supply chain management in primary healthcare, and a few definitions, some of which you're quite aware of. Mostly, I am interested in talking about the supply chain management systems, which are the inter-organizational systems that enable companies to efficiently, I say companies or hospitals and all those departments, to efficiently handle the flow of goods from suppliers to consumers. Then the most important aspect today is the supply value chain, which refers to the range of activities that adds value at every single step in designing, producing, and delivering a quality product to the customer. Or before as a separate profession, but now as pharmacists, we want to take it over in matters of health products and technologies and want to see the value we can add in this chain that is already existent. It is trained mostly as a social science probably course, but then we have appreciated that we take about quite a good percentage of our work involves supply chain. So it is important that we really see how much value we can add in this area. The most important aspect is that these systems are supposed to finally help us achieve the desired health outcomes. How do they do that? By ensuring uninterrupted availability of quality products and service delivery to communities. Now, this also should happen through product accessibility by end users. Accessibility is both availability, affordability, acceptability, and all the rest that involve accessibility. Now, the systems are everything from the consumer to the products themselves, to the management, which is us in terms of products and technologies, to the financing bit, to distribution, policies, information systems, and all the rest that involves supply chain. So in our panel discussion today, we are majorly going to see how these systems can be made more scalable sustainable and integrated so that we achieve the highest possible level of an efficient supply chain system. Now, why do we need it? Naturally, we deal with health products and technologies. So our most primary role is to save lives from those who come to us for treatment.